Hey, it's Tim with AK Endless Sports Cards. All right, so this weekend's video is coming out a little bit late. I'm trying to get those out on Saturdays, but there's a reason. I spent a better part of yesterday negotiating for a rather big card. As a matter of fact, it's the dollar amount wise, it's the most I've ever spent on a trading card. Phenomenal card, but it's not graded by PSA, which really got me thinking that the gap between BGS and PSA has just continuously gotten wider and wider and wider. And I'm not really entirely sure why. So let's talk about some of these pros and cons between the two companies. So, first off, I think one of the things that people like the most about BGS, I know I do, is the fact that you get subgrades. You can get it broken down by centering your surface, corners, and edges. It's really nice to know if your card has a flaw or flaws, uh, the general vicinity and where you can find those flaws within the card. I like the subgrades piece. I do think they get a little bit overblown. I think sometimes people say, well, it's got a 9 on the surface or it's got a 9 on the centering, so I don't know. I've just seen too many examples of cards being submitted multiple times and receiving different subgrades to say that those numbers are basically etched in stone. So it comes down to just looking at a card and saying, okay, yep, this really does look good. So I appeal, and actually looking at the card still does come into play. But overall, I really do like the idea of subgrades. Second piece, I still think that the BGS slab is the best one on the market. I do like CGC, the fact that the plastic is so clear and the card kind of pops. I still like having the inner sleeve within these BGS slabs, and I like the durability of the slab itself as well. It's a little bit thicker, feels a little bit sturdier than a lot of the other companies. With that said, I also like these BGS slabs the best personally for thicker cards. So if you have some sort of a jersey card, if you have some sort of a high end card that's on thicker stock, I like having it in a sleeve and then in the holder. And their thicker holders just, I don't know, they just seem to fit the cards better, in my opinion. I like having that inner sleeve um, for the protection of the card. Sometimes people don't like it because it kind of takes away from the eye appeal. It kind of dulls the card sometimes, especially if the inner sleeve isn't clean or has some scuffs on it or whatever the case may be. But those are my top three pros for BGS as a collector. That's what I like about the company the most. In terms of PSA pros, I think it's possible for both of these to be a pro, or for this same topic to be in pro in both categories. Um, it, PSA slabs don't have sleeves typically for regular sized cards, meaning that the cards tend to stand out a little bit more. The sleeves don't like dull cards and things like that. So I know a lot of people like the fact that there's no sleeve. However, when you do get thicker cards from PSA, or like cards that are smaller than standard size, for example, you do oftentimes get what collectors refer to as the baggy inside of the slab. And so a lot of people may not like that, but may like it as well because it kind of helps to keep the card in place. But not having a sleeve, I know, is a major plus, especially for like standard thickness cards, and I tend to agree with that as well. Um, Another pro with PSA is that they go from a 9 to a 10. There's no 9.5, and let's face it, when it comes to the card collecting community, people like the tens. I think that I see more and more often. I saw shirts saying this even, and I see people saying it on message boards that they don't want the 10 tax, meaning that they oftentimes don't want to pay the sometimes absurdly huge price differences for a PSA 10 versus like a BGS 9.5 or a 9.5 from another company, or even a 10 from another company. But people do like the 10s, and they're more common. And let's face it, PSA 10s are much easier to get than like a BGS 10 or a BGS 10 black label. PSA 10s are by far much easier to get. And so, I list that in the pro column for people that really want to get those 10s. I would say the other pro is just the overall popularity. I just got back from the national. If you missed my national videos, please go back and give those a look because I got a lot of great show footage, and have daily pickup videos and things like that. So you might enjoy those. But the overall popularity, you go to a big show like the national, that's what most people have. I kind of came back. I'd say probably a majority of what I bought at the show was PSA. Did buy some other labels as well, but it's what's available, and its overall popularity is huge. Now, cons wise, I I think that both PSA have a big con in common in that they're both inconsistent. Let's face it. I've sent in cards to PSA that I knew had flaws, but they're low numbered or they're just cards that I wanted for my PC that have come back tens. I mean, I've looked at them myself and I'm just like, well, there's kind of a big mark on this card, or there's like a little, surface indentation, something like that. But it's close to this design. It's a lower numbered card. I just want it for my personal collection. I'm gonna send it in anyway. Get it back, get a 10. Doesn't always happen. They'll typically pick those types of things up, but I have had that happen. Um, BGS is also pretty inconsistent. I've seen many videos where people submit a card, get it graded, they crack it out, they submit it again, and they get different subgrades. And so there's a lot of inconsistencies with both. In addition to that, with inconsistency, the quality control for both can be hit or miss. BGS, I've had cards that have been mislabeled. I've seen videos. I've never had one myself, but I've seen videos of PSA cards with the wrong players' names on them, that sort of thing. So it's kind of a common con for both of these companies in that they're not perfect. They do make some mistakes, despite the fact that they do have various types of quality control. Things do still slip through the cracks, and that's just part of it. I will say that a specific con with BGS is that during COVID times they just made a lot of strange decisions, and they really just got so far behind. I don't submit things directly to BGS anymore. I will buy their slabs for sure, but I don't submit anything directly to them anymore because there was a time right around when COVID had hit where I'd sent in an order, my brother and I did, and it took between 16 and 17 months to get the order back. And that was kind of like the last straw for me as far as submitting to them. Looking at the gem rate data, they are so far behind other companies, especially PSA. They're just getting nowhere near the volume. So I get the fact that that collectors kind of have spoken and they prefer PSA and really to a lesser degree prefer SGC and CGC. Like I get that, but I think that we're getting to a point now, and this is really kind of the main idea that I wanted to mention in this video. This gap between sale prices of BGS cards and PSA cards is really just it's so wide now that at what point are these cards like amazing deals? Now we're gonna have different opinions on this. Some people will say I'm not buying any BGS cards. I just won't do it. Some people will say I'll only buy BGS cards if I think I can crack them and send them to PSA or whatever the case may be. But this gap has gotten so wide between these sale prices. I was looking at sales of Michael Jordan rookies and cards within the same grade between PSA and BGS. Sometimes there's thousands of dollars in sale price difference between a PSA 8 and a BGS 8 or a BGS 9 and a PSA 9. Thousands of dollars. I have a PSA Jordan rookie. The only reason why I have that and not a BGS was because PSA rookies at the time that I bought mine were cheaper for the same grade. So when people say, if anybody ever says, well, it's always been this way, it has not. BGS had been the king prior. And as far as cards in the slab and stuff, I still think that aesthetically they look pretty good. And BGS has its problems, but I'm not crazy about like the no subgrades. I will still buy no sub cards, but subgrades I think are still a major advantage for BGS. So let me give you an example, and then I'll close out with an unexpected pickup that I got actually last night. So scenario wise, at what point is buying a BGS over a PSA advantageous? Like what dollar amount? If you're, let's use round numbers. If you're buying a $2,000 card and the PSA version is 2,000, and the BGS version in the exact same grade is 1,400. Is the PSA card still to buy? And let's use numbers on the same scale now. If a PSA 9 of a card is $2,000 and a BGS 9 of the same card is $1,400, is buying the PSA card still just a given? In my mind, it is not. People are going to have different opinions on this. A $600 difference on a $2,000 card. So you're talking a 30% difference in the same grade. To me, as a collector, and again, these are all just my opinions, this is not some like pump and dump or anything like that. And this is not me telling you to go out and buy these. This is just my opinion and my thoughts as a collector. Um, I, in that situation, as long as the BGS card looks good, I would buy the BGS. And within the next week or two, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is because I actually did, in fact, do this. And so I don't have the card yet, and I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to talk about the specific card until I get it in hand. But I will show you this card and kind of go through my thought process there. But to me, this gap is just so wide that as a collector, I found an opportunity and I took advantage of it and was able to purchase this card. So we'll talk more about that within the next week or two. It may take a couple weeks. We'll see. Um, with that said, so I went to trade night last night at Bosco's in Anchorage. They typically do them once a month, and basically, they're super gracious. They have free pizza and soda and water, and they also have a drawing, one for kids, under 18 years old, and the other one for adults, 18 and above. And they have different types of prizes. For the kids, they typically have like a kids crate, and for the adults, they either have a signed basketball or like a signed jersey, whatever the case may be. And so I entered this last night and won. And so what I won was a TriStar Hidden Treasures Game Day Greats box. So the rule when you go to trade night is that if you win, you have to open it on site, and you have to be available. You have to be willing to have them take a picture of you and put it on the website. To which, of course, no problem at all with me. So I opened it, and here's what I got. Oops. I got a Lawrence Taylor autographed jersey, PSA DNA authenticated. And so this is actually the thing that came with it. Kind of goes through a lot of his accomplishments. And so pretty pumped about that, to get a really nice Hall of Fame autographed jersey. I really thought that was pretty good. So really thankful for Bosco's. If you're in that Anchorage area, if you're in Alaska and you're around Anchorage or you're visiting, Bosco's is a really nice shop to be able to visit. They have a really nice selection of, wax and supplies and that sort of thing. And they have really, friendly people working there. And so thanks again to Bosco's for that. So with that said, if you like this type of content and you haven't already, if you'd consider subscribing, that would be great. If you've already subscribed, feel free to tell a friend so we can continue to spread awareness about the channel. And I hope that everybody has had a great week and will have a great week coming up here. And remember that the opportunities for collecting sports cards are endless.